So on today's video, we're going to take a look at Litecoin's regression lines to see where the future Litecoin price could be heading. We could see $1,000 Litecoin in the near future if these regression lines play out, and also if Litecoin still projects this upwards trend to the upside. So we're also gonna take a look at Cowen's regression lines to see where the price is headed. So stay tuned and let's roll the cameras. So I hope you're having a good day. This is me, Digital Digits, bringing a weekly video on Litecoin. As you can see on your screens, this is a monthly Litecoin chart, and this is a very bullish chart for Litecoin as it's in an uptrend, and we could see $1,000 Litecoin by 2023. So Litecoin on CoinMarketCap is ranked 7, and currently making this video the price is $61. So if you put Litecoin below this price, you are up significantly. So now let's look at the regression lines of Cowen to see where Litecoin is headed in the near future.
In this one, we're going to be looking at logarithmic regression of Litecoin. And so I did this for Bitcoin and Ethereum recently, and I was asked to make one for Litecoin, so I've done that. So basically what I did was I fit these logarithmic regression lines to the data and nothing else, no market sentiment or anything else like that. But I just kind of want to go through what basically try to help understand what the price is doing by visually looking at it on a logarithmic regression plot. So one of the things we notice is that Litecoin has these halvings just like Bitcoin does, and it happens approximately every 4 years. Now, Litecoin has this thing where it doesn't really seem to go through the same exact cycle that some of the other coins do. And in fact, for a lot of the regression curves, this bottom over here would have been much lower on this graph, but it just seems like it's much higher than the other coins I've looked at. So anyways, what we're looking at here is trying to determine where Litecoin might be headed if we were to continue our current behavior in terms of our logarithmic regression growth. So one of the things I want to point out to you guys is how the halving affects the price. So back in 2015, you can see that leading up to the halving, we had a very large increase in price, and you can see that on these curves here, we went up 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, on these logarithmic regression lines. We went up 4. And then we corrected back down into the halving. So we started going back down before the halving occurred. And then if you fast forward to today, here's the halving, and before the halving we saw this increase. And if you look, we went up 1, 2, 3, 4, so the same as over here on these logarithmic regression lines. And then we corrected down. And in both cases, we corrected down 3 lines. So you can see 1, 2, 3, ultimately, which led to this, and then currently we're at 1, 2, 3, and this is where we currently are. And I've drawn this for some speculation, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, if you look at the lows here from each cycle, after we have a peak, we have a low, then we have kind of like an intermediate high, a local high, where it's just basically the pricing in of the halving, which then we see a correction. But you should note that the correction that occurs after this run-up in anticipation of the halving, the correction is not nearly as... It doesn't get us to where we initially were. So initially we were much lower, we go up, and then ultimately it lands us one regression line higher than we were. At least that's what it has done so far. So, if this were to continue to play out, then, in the next bull cycle, or the next market cycle, I should say, it'd be interesting to see if it does a similar thing where it goes up 4 regression lines before the halving, corrects down into the halving, and you can see that when the halving occurred, it had corrected down 2 regression lines. So here, from this regression line, we came down 2, and then from here, we came down 2 into the halving. And then after the halving, we essentially oscillated between these two curves, and then ultimately came down to this last, or the second to last regression line. And once we, kind of rode that line, that's ultimately right before we saw this massive run up in price. And you can see the same thing potentially happening over here. We came up 4 regression lines, came down 2 into the halving. We've coming down that other way, and we might be oscillating in here for the remainder of, or the next year potentially. We might be around this area. And if we were, that would basically put the low, a Litecoin low of around $40 potentially, and then going all the way up to potentially $55 by 2021. Now, if we were to continue this basically the same pattern, then we might see a run up to the top of this regression line over here, which would be a pretty significant run up. I mean, it would be a decent percent gain there. But ultimately, if we were to continue the same pattern, then we might just be between these 2 regression lines for the next year or so. And that's perfectly normal. I'm not here to shill you on any coin. I'm basically here to tell you what I think is going to happen. And I think that there is a decent amount of evidence that we are just simply repeating what has happened before. And clearly the past does not always predict the future. But, so far, going up 4, going down 2 into the halving, and then going down 1 more has been repeated. And all of this was following a very strong bear market. So just keep this in mind. So this, past this point, it's just speculation. We might see this oscillate between these 2 regression lines, and we might see this ultimate peak, which would potentially get us to around $1,538. I got that by looking at the percent gain here, and I essentially I didn't use the same percent gain, because if you look at other cryptos, from cycle to cycle, they become less and less. So this is basically about a 300% increase from here to here. And I think this is definitely possible that we see $1,500 Litecoin. But we'll have to see what happens. Clearly, for many cryptos, or at least for Bitcoin and Ethereum, they kind of fall down these regression lines. But I don't really think that's, I don't think it's the same story with Litecoin exactly. You can see that here we started way higher than the other ones than Ethereum and Bitcoin. So these regression lines I don't think they have the same, they're representing the same thing when comparing to Bitcoin. So this is basically my idea of what could potentially happen.
Litecoin is an interesting project to look out for the near future. Litecoin has similar characteristics as Bitcoin. It also has quantitative hardening, where the halving occurs every 4 years. Litecoin did have its halving this year. I think early this year, Litecoin did have its halving, and this could be another factor that could increase the Litecoin price. Even though the Litecoin developers aren't working on the coin, Litecoin fundamentals are still good for the long run. As Benjamin Cowen said, that Litecoin could take some time to reach those price targets in the near future. So this is gonna be it for today's video. Always stay digital.